Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Tuesday, September 25th, 2018. Today I'm going to recap yesterday's Monday Night Football game between the Steelers and the Bucks. Then I'll go over yesterday's baseball action, look ahead to tonight's action. I'll do my 2008 MLB ReDraft. That was interesting. And I'll do my weekly NFL Power Rankings, and Week 4, Guess the Lines. Alright, the Steelers get on the win column. 30-27 winners over the Bucks. This looked like it was going to be a blowout. Tampa Bay makes it interesting. Pittsburgh's now 1-1-1. Tampa's 2-1. Ben Roethlisberger, 30 of 38, 353 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Ryan Fitzpatrick, 30 of 50, 411 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 picks. The Bucks actually got on the board first with a 4-yard touchdown pass from Ryan Fitzpatrick to Cameron Brate, 7-0 Tampa Bay. Then 2 minutes later, 75 yards, Vance McDonald from Big Ben. Steelers mixed the extra point, 7-6 game. Second quarter, Chris Boswell kicks a 38-yarder, 9-7 Steelers. 2 minutes later, 27 yards from Big Ben to Antonio Brown, 16-7. 8 minutes later, Bud Dupree, 10-yard pick six, 23-7 Steelers. Then the Bucks drive down. Chandler Catanzaro, 21-yard field goal, 23-10. Then with 6 seconds left of the half, Ryan Switzer catches a 1-yard pass from Ben Roethlisberger, 30-10. And it's halftime. That was it for the Steelers scoring. Third quarter, 5 minutes in, Chandler Catanzaro, 28-yard field goal, makes it 30-13. Fourth quarter, Chris Goodwin from Ryan Fitzpatrick for 4 yards, made it 30-20. Then with 5 minutes left, about 24 yards from Ryan Fitzpatrick to Mike Evans, made it 30-27. So, too little, too late for the Buccaneers. Baseball. Not everybody played last night because a lot of teams were traveling and whatnot. The Yankees defeat the Rays 4-1. The Rays are now eliminated, so the Yankees helped Oakland catch the final playoff spot. Yankees are 96-60. Tampa Bay's 87-69. Sonny Gray with the win, Brian Yarbrough with the loss, Zach Bray with the save. So the Yankees do a good job with the bullpenning/opener strategy. The Nats defeated the Marlins 7-3. The Nats are 79-78. The Marlins are 62-94. Justin Miller with the win, Sandy Alcantara with the loss. The Astros defeated the Blue Jays 5-3. The Astros are 99-57. Toronto 71-86. Dallas Keuchel with the win, Marco Estrada with the loss, Roberto Osuna with the save. So, interesting storyline of Osuna going back to the Blue Jays. He was heavily booed. The Red Sox defeated the Orioles 6-2. The Red Sox are 106-51. Baltimore's 45-111. Nathan Eovaldi with the win, Dylan Bundy with the loss. The Pirates defeated the Cubs 5-1. The Pirates are 79-76. The Cubs are 91-65. Jameson Taillon with the win. Cole Hamels with the loss. The Indians defeated the White Sox 4-0. The Indians are 88-68. Chicago's 61-95. Corey Kluber with the win. Ian Hamilton with the loss. The Brewers defeated the Cardinals 6-4. The Brewers are 90-67. St. Louis 87-70. Corbin Burns with the win. Bud Norris with the loss. Corey Nebel with the save. The Rockies defeated the Phillies 10-1. The Rockies are 86-70. The Phillies are 78-78. John Gray with the win. Zach Eflin with the loss. The Dodgers defeated the Diamondbacks 7-4. The Dodgers are 88-69. The Diamondbacks are 79-78. Clayton Kershaw with the win. Andrew Chaffin with the loss. The Angels defeated the Rangers 5-4 in 11 innings on a walk-off homer by Jose Brasino. The Angels are 76-81. The Rangers are 66-90. Taylor Cole with the win. Matt Moore with the loss. The A's defeated the Mariners 7-3. The A's are 95-62. The Mariners are 85-71. Ryan Butcher with the win. Sean Armstrong with the loss. The Padres defeated the Giants 5-0. The Pods are 63-94. The Giants are 72-85. Brian Mitchell with the win. Derek Holland with the loss. Kirby Yates with the save. Tonight's games at 6:40, you have the Royals and the Reds. Eric Skoglund and Matt Harvey. 7 o'clock, ESPN. Yankees, Rays, Luis Severino and Jake Faria. I'll tell you what, if Severino pitches well in this start, like he did against the Red Sox, he's getting that start in that wild card game. I'm just going to say it right now. And I do think the Yankees will get the win tonight to cut that magic number down to 3 for home field advantage. Marlins, Nationals. Jeff Brigham and Max Scherzer. I think Scherzer's pitched himself out of the Cy Young race. I think it's Jacob deGrom's to lose. Astros, Blue Jays. Josh James and Sam Gaviglio. James has pitched well for Houston. He's going to be an interesting X factor for them in the playoffs. Orioles, Red Sox. Jacob Yacobanis and David Price. Red Sox have nothing to play for because they already set the franchise record with wins. They already have home field advantage locked up. Interested to see if they continue to play up to capability or they'll just take a breather until game 1 of the ALDS, which would be next Friday for them, I believe. The Braves and the Mets. Touki Toussaint and Noah Syndergaard. Syndergaard's had a great year. I just think it's being overshadowed by Jacob deGrom's phenomenal year. Toussaint I'm going to talk about a little bit on Thursday when I do my prospect checkups for every team, where I'm going to evaluate each team's top 10 prospects according to MLB.com and just do like a yearly checkup on them. 8 o'clock, Indians, White Sox. Trevor Bauer and James Shields. There's talk that Bauer's going to be in the bullpen for the Indians in the playoffs. That would be interesting for them as like a log man. Then your rotation would consist of Corey Kluber, Mike Clevenger, Carlos Carrasco, and Shane Bieber. Bieber, I think, deserves some Rookie of the Year votes. Not saying he's going to finish in the top 3, but he deserves at least the shot at the top 5 for the American League Rookie of the Year. He's really helped the Indians this year. Also an 8 o'clock game, Brewers, Cardinals. Gio Gonzalez and Austin Gomber. Big game for St. Louis to get themselves back closer to the Brewers. They currently are 3 games back of the Brewers for home field advantage in the National League wildcard game. The Rockies are lurking at a half game back of them, so this is a must-win for the St. Louis Cardinals tonight at home to distance themselves from the Rockies and get themselves a little bit closer to the Milwaukee Brewers. And it's also big for Milwaukee because they're one back in the loss column of the Cubs, who host the Pirates tonight at Wrigley Field. Chris Archer against Mike Montgomery. So that's going to be an interesting game in Wrigley Field. The Cubs have not clinched anything yet. We have the Tigers and the Twins. Spencer Turnbull and Cole Stewart. That's going to be a high-scoring affair. Phillies, Rockies at 8:40. Vince Velasquez and Chad Bettis must win for the Rockies as they try to inch closer to St. Louis and the Dodgers in their own division. Dodgers, Diamondbacks at 9:30. Well, it's really supposed to be 10 o'clock on ESPN. On the list it says 9:30, but it's supposed to be a 10 o'clock start. Walker Buehler and Matt Koch. This is easy. The Diamondbacks have at least checked out for me. They're done. They are eliminated. Dodgers need this game to shrink their magic number for the NL West. I think they'll get it. So I like the Dodgers here to get 20 games above 500. Rangers, Angels. Yvonne Gallardo and Matt Schumacher. Athletics, Mariners. Brett Anderson and Mike Leake. And last but not least, 10-15, Padres-Giants. Robbie Erlin and Chris Stratton. One thing I want to discuss before I move on to my redraft, the Giants fired Bobby Evans last night, their longtime GM. Time it's run its course. I think they should have done this last year at least. Evans did a great job building those teams, especially those 3 World Series teams. So this is a big move for the Giants. I wonder if this signals a rebuild potentially, depending on who they hire. I really do believe that they should trade Madison Bumgarner and Brandon Belt and see what you can get for them. I don't think they'll trade Posey because he's the face of the franchise. But the case can be made for him to be traded, but I don't think he will. I think they'll move him to first base because they have a stud catching prospect, Joey Bart, who I expect to be playing with the Giants as soon as next year. Then you move Posey to first base and you trade Brandon Belt. That's my case of what the Giants should do. Trade Belt, keep Posey, move Posey to first base, bring up Joey Bart for next year. I do think Bumgarner will be available perhaps. Johnny Cueto I think can be had. They want to dump Jeff Samardzija. I know that for a fact. They already traded Andrew McCutchen, but I know Bobby Evans made that deal. And somebody they got in that deal is actually playing on the big league roster right now, so at least they got some value from McCutchen. McCutchen, by the way, has really helped the Yankees out over the last month. All the Yankee pickups have been phenomenal by Brian Cashman, by the way, whether it's Jay Happ, McCutchen, and Danny Hechavarrias played some good defense for them at shortstop and third base. He had a big home run for them against the Athletics as well. Lance Lynn's pitched some nice games for the Yanks. Zach Britton has looked like the Zach Britton of old after a slow start to his Yankees stint. So, got to give Brian Cashman a lot of credit. Oh, and Luke Voit, who has 11 home runs with the team. He has been a pleasant surprise and pretty much took first base away from Greg Bird for them. So that's 6 great pickups by Brian Cashman. And if they all weren't there, especially Happ and Voit, maybe they're going to Oakland rather than potentially hosting the wild card game. Now I'm going to do my 2008 MLB redraft. We go from 1 to 30. Number 1, the Rays, Buster Posey. He was the best player from this draft. 3-time world champion with the Giants. Could you imagine if Posey was drafted by the Rays and how much things would be different for them? Him and David Price and Evan Longoria won all together in 2012 or in 2013. Hey, maybe they would have a better fate in 2013 if they had Buster Posey on that team. And in 2012, they missed the playoffs in 2012 too. The Pittsburgh Pirates at number 2, Charlie Blackmon, who's turned into a fantastic all-around player. A little bit of a late bloomer. He would have been fun in that outfield with McCutchen. They probably would have moved McCutchen over to a corner a couple years before they did. 3, the Royals, Eric Hosmer. That stays the same. We know what Hosmer did for KC, and he helped them win the 2015 World Series. Well, that team was relevant for a few years. For the Baltimore Orioles, Brandon Crawford. He's turned into a pretty good player for the Giants over the last few years. They could have had him and Manny Machado together between 2012 and 2016, 2017, even this year, before they would have probably had to trade Machado anyway, in which they ended up doing. 5, the San Francisco Giants, Aaron Hicks. He was a late bloomer too. He's become one of the more consistent players on the Yankees over the last year plus. That was a great trade by Brian Cashman because the Twins sold low on Hicks and the Yankees sold high on their then backup catcher John Ryan Murphy. And let's face it, that was another great trade by Brian Cashman. And if Hicks was on the Giants, maybe he would have been used as trade bait perhaps, or he could have been a part of something right now with the Giants, or maybe he would have been a piece of their future rebuild. So that would have been interesting if they took him. 6th, the then Florida Marlins, now Miami Marlins, Justin Smoke, another late bloomer. He was perceived as a bust when he was with the Rangers and even the Mariners. The Blue Jays got him, and he's turned into a different player with them. He probably would have been traded from the Marlins. 7, the Cincinnati Reds, Josh Harrison, who's really a versatile player for the Pittsburgh Pirates. They decided to keep him at the trade deadline. That's because they were in the race at that point. Wonder if they'll move on from him in the offseason or if he's going to stick around. I'm talking about Pittsburgh. But if he was on the Reds, he would have been on those teams with Todd Frazier, and then when Joey Votto was in his prime, Jay Bruce. He would have been on all those teams that were contenders between like 2010 and 2013. And then probably would have been trade bait. 8, the White Sox, T. Gordon. He probably would have been trade bait for them. He probably would have been their shortstop or second baseman. And he probably would have been traded when they had that big sell-off in 2016. 9, the Washington Nationals, Yonder Alonso. He would have been a helpful player for them right now off the bench, hitting some home runs, playing some first base, and you move Ryan Zimmerman to like a left field situation or whatever. 10, the Houston Astros, Lance Lynn. 2012 All-Star and has been a consistent pitcher for most of his career. I talked about him a few minutes ago and how he's been a nice trade acquisition for the Yankees after they got him from the Twins for Tyler Austin. Lynn would have been a nice asset for the Astros. They were rebuilding at the time he was at his peak, so they probably would have traded him. 11, the Texas Rangers, Craig Kimbrell, the all-star closer of the Red Sox. He would have probably been trade bait on the Rangers when they were a seller in 2014. Or maybe they would have kept him for their 15 when they were good in 15 and 16, and then they probably could have traded him if he was in theory on the Rangers. But when they were a contender in the likes of 2011, 2012, 2013, he would have been a big piece for them. And hey, if he was their closer in 2011, maybe they win that World Series. Number 12, the Oakland Athletics, Pedro Alvarez. He was a solid player for the Pirates, and then the Pirates gave up on him because he's not a very good first baseman defensively, a little inconsistent offensively, and was a bench player for the Orioles this past year, and I believe last year as well. He would have been a nice bench piece for Oakland right now, and even when Oakland was decent between 2012 and 2014. 13, the St. Louis Cardinals, Jake Odorizzi. He probably would have been in their rotation. Maybe still is in their rotation right now. Maybe they could have traded him this year in their little sell-off that they had, which I don't think they regret doing, although the players they traded away have been thriving with their new teams. I mentioned Luke Voit before with the Yankees, Tommy Pham with Tampa Bay. The Minnesota Twins, Eric Thames. They probably would have picked him. He probably would have been solid for them. Then he would have been traded probably. 15, the Los Angeles Dodgers, Danny Espinosa. When he was at his peak, he was a solid player for the Nationals. And if he was on the Dodgers, he probably would have been their second baseman until they probably would have gotten rid of him or whatever. Because he really didn't pan out to potential, although he was a solid player, but just not what the Nats thought. 16, the Milwaukee Brewers, Logan Forsythe. He was a pretty solid player when he came up with the Rays, and the Rays flipped him to the Dodgers, and then he struggled with the Dodgers, and then they flipped him to the Twins, and he thrived with the Twins. And if he was on the Brewers, he probably would have been trade bait. The Toronto Blue Jays at 17, Jordy Mercer, currently the starting shortstop on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Probably would have been a nice piece on those Toronto teams that were playoff teams in 2015 and 16. Probably would have been on those frisky teams in 2012, 13, and 14 that weren't great per se, but were certainly underachievers. And a team that I thought had a lot of potential in those years, especially 2013 when they went out and got those big names from the Marlins in that trade. Who knows, Mercer would have been trade bait perhaps in that Marlins deal. 18, the New York Mets, Lonnie Chisenhall. He didn't pan out like the Indians thought he would, but he's still a solid bench player for them. Probably would have been a nice solid bench guy for the Mets in those 2 years where they were a contender in 15 and 16. 19, the Cubs, Wade Miley. He probably would be a nice fit in their starting rotation right now. But if he was up in, like, say, 2012 or 2013, they probably would have traded him, or even 14. 20, the Seattle Mariners, Brad Hand. He would have been a nice piece for them in that bullpen. 21, the Detroit Tigers, Tyson Ross. Would have been a nice piece in that rotation a few years back when they were a contender, or he would have probably been trade bait in those years when they were a contender, back when they had Verlander and Scherzer and Porcello in the same rotation. 22, the New York Mets, Robbie Grossman. He would have been a nice guy on the Mets, although I do not think he's a great defensive player per se. 23 to San Diego Padres, Justin Wilson. He probably would have been trade bait for them. 24, the Philadelphia Phillies, David Phelps. Somebody that came up, was a back-and-forth guy from starter to bullpen for the Yankees. Yankees traded him to Miami with Martin Prado for Nathan Eovaldi. And I believe the last piece in that trade was Domingo Germán, believe it or not. But that trade didn't work out for the Yankees. If Phelps was on Philly, he probably would have been trade bait for them too. 25, the Colorado Rockies, Jason Castro. He had one All-Star season, but he's really not that great of a catcher. Somebody that's had moments. He would have been a nice fit on the Rockies right now. 26, the Arizona Diamondbacks, Tim Beckham. Was actually the first overall pick in the 08 draft, but never really panned out. And then he goes to the Orioles and he's playing at his capability, which isn't what the Rays thought. But he's probably just a solid infielder that just never really panned out like the Rays thought he would when they picked him first overall. 27, the Minnesota Twins, Nathan Eovaldi. He probably would have been trade bait for them. 28, the New York Yankees, Ike Davis. Showed some flashes when he was on the Mets. A high strikeout guy with a lot of power. Not in the league anymore. And if he was a Yankee prospect, he probably would have been traded because he would have been blocked by Mark Teixeira at the time. 29, the Cleveland Indians, Andrew Kashner. Would have been a nice fit there in Cleveland when he was at his best in, say, 2012, 2013. 2013 was the first year the Indians were good under Terry Francona. And number 30, the Boston Red Sox, Mike Montgomery, who's currently a swing guy on the Chicago Cubs. and a very valuable pitcher for them. The Red Sox could have very well used somebody like Mike Montgomery right now to be a swing guy in their pen rotation. And that's my 2008 baseball redraft. Now I'm going to do my NFL power rankings for this week. I'm going to go from 32 to 1. 32 is the San Francisco 49ers. Why are they here? They have a win. They're 1-2. But guess what? They lost their quarterback for the season. So if that's the case, that probably is the worst roster in the NFL without Jimmy Garoppolo. So that's why they're there. No Jimmy, no chance. They're done. They're a cross-off for me. They're bringing in guys like Tom Savage. I mentioned yesterday and joked around about Kaepernick. And I heard somebody else mention, why not bring in Kaepernick? Although that would be a funny story, and I think San Francisco would embrace that. But I think the reality is that Kaepernick just isn't good. And I said on my podcast yesterday that he's a project of Jim Harbaugh that thrived for a few years under Harbaugh. 31, the Arizona Cardinals. They're 0-3, but it's Josh Rosen time. Rosen came in at the end of the game and threw an interception that cost him a chance to come back and steal that game against the Bears. 30 is the Buffalo Bills. They're 1-2. Are you sure they're not the worst? They just went out and beat the Vikings in Minnesota, and nobody gave them a chance. But I got to give Josh Allen credit. He played very well in that game. And I'm interested to see how he plays this upcoming week. Number 29 is the Oakland Raiders, who are 0-3. I think they're forever going to regret trading away Khalil Mack. Yeah, they're getting 2 first-round picks from the Bears, which are probably going to be in the teens. But maybe the one in 2020 will be in the 20s. This year's, I think, will be in the teens. Unless there's some catastrophic injuries to people on the Bears, or if the Bears end up better than we think, they could be in the 20s. But they're going to regret that trade. Mack is one of the best 5 players in football. I can't believe they did that. They deserve to be 0-3. And John Gruden must be on fumes right now. Number 28 is the Houston Texans. This is probably the team I overrated the most. I had them penciled in as a Super Bowl contender before the season. I couldn't have been more wrong. They're 0-3. Deshaun Watson's clearly not 100% yet. J.J. Watt had his first good game in 2 years. He had 3 sacks the other day against the bad Giants offensive line. Number 27 is the Dallas Cowboys. I think this is clearly the worst team in the NFC East. They beat the Giants on that Sunday night game, but let's face it, if that Tavon Austin play doesn't happen, maybe the Giants force a 3-and-out. Maybe the Giants could have stolen that game. Maybe the Giants are 2-1 if not for that Tavon Austin play, and the Cowboys are sitting at 0-3. But no, they're 1-2. Like I said, I think this is the worst team in the NFC East. They looked hideous against the Seahawks offensively. And if I had to place money on first coach fired, to me, it's Jason Garrett. 26 is the Seattle Seahawks. This team is bad, but Russell Wilson will still win games like he did on Sunday against the Cowboys. And they'll probably still win some home games because of the 12th man and the whole deal. But this team's still a mess. Earl Thomas is in trade rumors linked to the Cowboys and the Chiefs. I'll tell you what, if he goes to Kansas City, I think that makes Kansas City the AFC favorites. They just need some help in that secondary because I like their pass rush, but they just need more secondary help, Kansas City. And I'll get to the Chiefs in a little bit, but Russell Wilson will still win you football games. Number 25 is the New York Football Jets. 1-2 on the season. Same old Jets. That team is not disciplined. They take too many penalties. I feel bad for Sam Darnold. I do not like his supporting cast at all. It's like Robbie Anderson, Isaiah Crowell. And Crowell, by the way, did a disgusting dance in the end zone on Thursday night where he rubbed the football on his backside. And I know why he did that. I think he was trying to take a shot at his former team in the Browns. But this is the same old Jets. Maybe Todd Bowles might be a candidate for first coach fired. Number 24 is the New York Football Giants. Coincidence or not that their worst player gets benched and they get a win. And I'm talking about Eric Flowers. They drafted him in 2015. He's been a complete bust. They finally benched him. They should have benched him after week 1's hideous performance. But they bench him, and the Giants go out there and put up 27 points and get a very important win to perhaps save their season. And it's so much different that Eli Manning doesn't look washed up behind a better offensive line. And I said that I think Eli was washed, but the reason why is because he has a bad offensive line. And if he had a good offensive line, maybe he wouldn't look washed. And obviously Odell Beckham Jr. and Saquon Barkley make Eli Manning look solid too, so you can't discount that. But good for the Giants. They have a big one on Sunday at home against the Saints. Number 23 is the Indianapolis Colts. My big takeaway here is that Andrew Luck isn't 100%. Bringing out Jacoby Brissett to try to get the Hail Mary for the win says all you need to know about that. And the Colts are 1-2. But here's one good takeaway for the Colts. Their defense might be better than we think. They did a good job against the Redskins, slowing them down. They did a good job against Wentz and the Eagles, but the caveat for Wentz is that he's not 100%. I'll get to the Eagles in a few minutes. And the caveat for Washington is that Alex Smith has one bad game a year, and that could have been Alex Smith's one bad game. So, hold off on the Colts. Number 22 is the Detroit Lions. They're 1-2 on the year. So much for the Jets debacle? Is that real? They should have beaten the Niners in week 2. Jimmy Garoppolo threw that awful interception that ended up getting called back because of a defensive holding that probably cost the Lions a chance to come back and win that game. And they looked really good against the Patriots. So, hey, maybe this team isn't as bad as the one we saw in that Jets game. Number 21 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Fitzmagic turned into Fitztragic in that first half. But I have to give the Bucs credit for coming back and making that game interesting late. They did not give up. And if I'm Dirk Cutter, you make Ryan Fitzpatrick your starter going forward. Yeah, he threw 3 picks in the first half, but he rebounded nicely in the second half to give the Bucs a chance to win the game. Number 20 is the Tennessee Titans. How are they 2-1? Just how? Marcus Mariota's not 100%. Blaine Gabbert's been seeing a lot of playing time. Blaine Gabbert stinks, as we all know. And I don't know if I'm sold on their defense either. In week 2, they beat Houston, but Houston clearly isn't what we think they are. And Blake Bortles turned into a pumpkin on Sunday, so I'm not sold on the Titans' defense. The Titans have some injuries on offense, with a few offensive linemen are hurt, and obviously Mariota. But how is this team 2-1? Number 19 is the Cleveland Browns. They're 1-1. Baker to the rescue! That was a great performance for them on Thursday night, especially by Baker Mayfield. Big one on Sunday in Oakland against the Raiders. Number 18 is the Chicago Bears. Are we sure Mitch Trubisky is good? He did not have a good game on Sunday against the Cardinals, but I think they're regretting on that one already. I think that was a complete miss by them because of how good Patrick Mahomes has looked so far this year, but who knows? Number 17 is the Green Bay Packers. They are 1-1. Aaron Rodgers doesn't look right. He just doesn't. Number 16 is the Denver Broncos. They're 2-1. Case Keenum looks like he's regressed from last year. He threw a couple interceptions already this year. They had the lead against the Ravens, but the Ravens ended up coming back and winning that game. They have a big one on Monday night against the Chiefs at home. Number 15 is the New England Patriots. Yes, I said it. Number 15 is the New England Patriots. They're 1-2. But don't panic yet. They're still the Patriots. Josh Gordon, Julian Edelman, those guys are going to be back. I think Gordon will have an impact on them. This is still the Patriots. Bill Belichick's still here. Tom Brady's still there. So, don't panic yet. Number 14 is the surprising 3-0 Miami Dolphins. I do not think it's for real. I think they've run into some teams at the right time. Week 1, they had the Titans who lost Marcus Mariota. Week 2, they had the Jets who were due for the classic letdown game after the big win in Detroit. And in Week 3, they have the Oakland Raiders in a 1 o'clock Eastern game time start. And the Raiders just aren't that good. Big one for them to prove themselves on Sunday as they're at New England. I'll do guess the lines in a couple minutes. Number 13 is the Baltimore Ravens. What's the real team? Is it the team that we saw beat the Broncos and beat the Bills at home, or is it the team that kind of laid an egg in Cincinnati against the Bengals and put up a bunch of garbage time points? Time will tell. Number 12 is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're 1-1. Big bounce back win for them last night, but is a trade for Le'Veon Bell coming? Number 11 is the Washington Redskins. I have the same question with them as I did with the Ravens. What's the real team? Is it the team that we saw beat the Cardinals and beat the Packers, or is it the team that laid an egg against the Colts? Time will tell. 10 is the Minnesota Vikings. What the heck was that? I can't believe they lost as a 17-point favorite at home to the Buffalo Bills. Kirk Cousins has one bad game a year. That happened to be it. No Dalvin Cook certainly hurt them. No Everson Griffin certainly hurt them. Griffin's actually in the hospital right now being treated with a mental health issue. I feel very bad for Griffin. He's under evaluation in the hospital after a bizarre gun incident. And right now he's on leave for the team. I think this is going to hurt them this year. I'm not saying that they're going to miss the playoffs because of this, but it's certainly not a good look for the Minnesota Vikings. 9 is the Atlanta Falcons. Injuries are everywhere. Deion Jones, Keanu Neal, Devontae Freeman, Julio Jones is banged up. But props to Calvin Ridley. He looks like a dark horse candidate for the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. Number 8 is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Who's the real Blake Bortles? Is it the guy that we saw against the Patriots? Or is it the guy that struggled against the Giants and against the Titans? Time will tell. 7 is the Los Angeles Chargers. Yes, they're 1-2, but they're here because I just think that they're better than their records showed. They've gone up against two of the best offenses in the league without their best pass rusher in Joey Bosa, who will be back next month. 6 is the Cincinnati Bengals. They're 2-1, but they just lost to a good team on the road. But they are an underdog in that game. They missed Joe Mixon badly, and they need him back if they want to make a run at this. Number 5 is the New Orleans Saints. They're 2-1, but I feel like this team hasn't really put it all together yet. Week 1, they were a debacle defensively, and they lost that game. Week 2, they barely beat the Browns in an offensive struggle for them. Or I should say, they were struggling offensively against the Browns. And then they struggled defensively against Atlanta. They gave up, I believe it was 37 points to an Atlanta team with a banged up Devontae Freeman and a banged up Julio Jones. I don't think Freeman played on Sunday. Wait, he didn't. But I'm a little concerned with the Saints, although I still have them at number 5. They have a big one in New York, or I should say in East Rutherford over the weekend against the Giants. 4 is the Philadelphia Eagles. I think Carson Wentz looks rusty. Give him some time. He'll be back. The Eagles just have a lot of injuries right now. 3, the Carolina Panthers. Big win for them against the Bengals at home. They're 2-1. This is a team that's looked better and better every week. Christian McCaffrey has looked better and better each week. He's obviously the breakout star of the league so far, other than Patrick Mahomes. I called it with those two, as I mentioned on yesterday's podcast. Number 2, speaking of Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Mahomes is the MVP favorite right now, and I don't think it's close. Number 1 is the Los Angeles Rams, and speaking of not even close, they're the best team in football, and it's not even close. But their best 2 cornerbacks in Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib are out for a month. Let's see if the Vikings and other teams start to take advantage of that beginning Thursday night. Guess the lines for Week 4. I have to make some changes to my picks because of some injuries and whatnot. I talked about it a little bit a few minutes ago. Vikings and the Rams. I have the Rams as a 6-point favorite over the Minnesota Vikings, and the Rams are minus 6.5. So it's a half point off there. The Bengals and the Falcons. I have the Falcons by 5.5. I'm basing that on the Joe Mixon early injury, although Atlanta has a lot of injuries too, and it is 5.5. The Buccaneers at the Bears. I have the Bears minus 3. That looks easy to me. And the Chicago Bears are minus 3. So another correct pick for me. The Lions are at the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are a 2-point favorite at home over the Detroit Lions. That was a hard line to predict. I originally had it at 3, but that Lions went over the Patriots. We convinced it to drop it to 2, and Dallas is still giving 3. So I was 1 point off there. The Bills at the Packers. I have the Packers minus 11 at home against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And Green Bay's minus 10, so I was 1 point off there. The Eagles at the Titans. I have this as a pick'em because of all the injuries on both sides. It was just sort of a hard line to predict here. And this game has Philadelphia as a 3.5-point favorite. So that makes sense. That says all you need to know about Marcus Mariota. If it was Mariota, this line would have been lower than that. Texans at the Colts. I have the Colts as a 2.5-point favorite over the Houston Texans. And Indy is a 1.5-point favorite. So I was 1 point off there. This is the easiest line to predict on here. Dolphins at the Patriots. I have the Pats minus 7 at home over the Miami Dolphins, and that's what it is. The Jets at the Jaguars. I have the Jaguars minus 6 at home against the New York Jets. And the Jags are minus 7.5 at home against the Jets. So I was 1.5 points off on that line. Next line, now I'm in the 4 o'clock games. Browns at the Raiders. I have the Raiders as a 2-point favorite at home over the Cleveland Browns and the Raiders are giving 2.5, so I was a half point off there. The Seahawks at the Cardinals. I have the Seahawks -3 at Arizona, and that's what it is. Saints at the Giants. I have the Saints -3.5 at MetLife Stadium against the Giants. And the Saints are laying 3.5, so I was correct on that line. 49ers at the Chargers without Jimmy Garoppolo. I think the Chargers are a 12-point favorite over the 49ers. And the Chargers are laying 10.5, so I was a 1.5 off there. I thought the line would be much higher than 10.5, or just a little higher, I should say. The Ravens at the Steelers. I have the Steelers giving 3 at home, and that's what the line is. And the Chiefs at the Broncos. I have the Chiefs -3.5 at home against the Denver Broncos. I'm sorry, at Denver. And the Chiefs are giving 5. I think that's a little teensy bit too high for a very good team, don't get me wrong, against a team with a good pass rush and a good home faithful getting points. So I think the Broncos are going to be a popular pick this week among gamblers and professional pickers and all the experts on TV. That's it for the podcast today. I'll be back tomorrow recapping all the baseball games, looking ahead to tomorrow's games. I'll also be doing my NHL Top 100 Players list, as well as my 2008 NBA redraft. I hope you guys have a great day, everybody.